Today's installment, we are going to talk about the USPTO search that people like to do, and we do as well, for trying to vet whether or not your trademark is available to file for trademark registration. Now, it's important to highlight that there are a bunch of different ways you can search to see the availability of a trademark. And if you don't know what a trademark is, probably prematurely watching this video, and you should watch my video on what a trademark is. But quickly, it's a source identifier. Nike swoosh, Lacoste alligator, the word Nike, the word Lacoste, those are both trademarks. The one that are logos, that's a graphical trademark, a logo mark. The other one's a word mark for the name. And these marks, you definitely want to make sure that when you go to file a trademark application, that there's nobody else out there with one that's confusingly similar. This is an important standard for the USPTO, because if there is one out there that's confusingly similar and they've already applied or it's already gotten registered, you're going to receive a 2D refusal from the USPTO, the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And a 2D refusal is a likelihood of similarity or confusion. And the entire trademark framework is built on avoiding consumer confusion. So if there's a confusingly similar mark, you're not going to be able to register your trademark. And to add insult to injury, when you file your trademark application and you receive a 2D refusal, that's a public record, and that company out there that has the trademark that's confusingly similar to yours, if they monitor the trademark database, they might send you a cease and desist letter just because you filed an application without first doing a search. So everyone does searches typically on their own. They search the internet, which is good. Or they will search the USPTO database, which is good. The reason I'm doing this video to explain why it's not enough to do that is because there's a lot of nuance that goes into a trademark search. I have filed close to probably 500 trademark applications in my work as an attorney in California, and that means that I've done probably 700 trademark searches. And when I say a trademark search, what I call the USPTO search, and there's some websites online that offer relatively good cursory search options, but that's exactly what they are. It is just that, it's cursory. So searching the USPTO database, searching these online websites, searching online with Google or Yahoo or Bing, those are going to be cursory searches because they leave a few things out. One of the things that they leave out is that no search like that, when you just search your trademark, is actually going to be comprehensive enough to register in the search engines every similar mark, right? A mark that maybe has another word added to it, or maybe is spelled a little bit differently but sounds the same, which the USPTO would call the same commercial impression. You know, you see companies now, they take vowels out of words or something like that, but the word still sounds the same. Well, that's going to be confusingly similar to a consumer, most likely, if they see two on a shelf or they see two in a search results. So that's one thing that it leaves out. In addition, it also doesn't necessarily search all of the various different trademark classes that you would fall within, and that's also significant when you do a trademark application, is being the only trademark in the trademark class that's applicable to your goods or services. So like legal services, for instance, class 45. But if somebody wants to have the same name as someone in class 45, but they're in class 25, they sell shirts and clothing, which is what Nike would be in. Those are two distinct classes, and you can have the same name in those two classes, and it's fine because you're doing different things under that same name, and that's not going to be confusing to a consumer. So doing these cursory searches online are a great preliminary way to check and see if there's any blatantly similar marks out there, right? But I call that a knockout search, because what you do there is, let's say you have three names that you're deciding between, and you do these cursory searches with the USPTO and online and maybe some other website, and you see that two have blatantly similar marks out there. Well, those two marks have been knocked out. You don't need to look at those anymore because you're cruising for trouble there with an infringement notice. But the last one, oh, maybe it looks like it could be good to go. Well, you haven't knocked that one out, so now it's time to do a comprehensive search. And for instance, myself, I use a search platform that references over 10,000 different trademark applications, registrations, and company names. And while that is obviously better than just the cursory searches that we're talking about here, that's not the end. That's not the conclusion of what makes a search so important. Because once I get my search results back and I go through that data and I look at all these marks that may or may not be similar, I then, based on my experience with trademark applications and working with examining attorneys at the USPTO and trying to argue against 2D refusals, which you can do. That's something you're allowed to argue back against the USPTO if you get a 2D refusal. They're not always successful and they're pretty difficult. But in doing that, my experience allows me to know to a better certainty when I look at the results from the really comprehensive search, which marks will and will not be problematic from a 2D confusing standpoint. And that doesn't even take into account some other things that the search helps with, which is whether or not your mark is too descriptive, whether or not it's going to be considered arbitrary or fanciful, or some of these other words that the USPTO uses, all of which goes into the thorough comprehensive search that an attorney would perform for you. And again, the expertise of that attorney is really where the critical thinking and the independent judgment comes in to determine, yeah, that mark that has all those vowels removed doesn't actually end up being too similar because X, Y, and Z. Or it is. And if it is, then there's a whole bunch of strategy that comes into trademark. Whether or not to reach out to them because they do something a little bit different and see if they're cool with you registering, and then you tell the USPTO with a consent agreement that both parties are cool and you can register it. Or maybe they're not using their mark anymore and you want to go buy it. All these different things that come into play. But the thing I want to highlight here is that that search online and that search with the USPTO is good. Do it. It's not something you don't want to do. It's not a waste of time, but it is only a precursor to a more thorough and comprehensive search that is going to allow you with a certainty to know whether or not it's worth filing your trademark application, which again can result in an infringement notice if you file it without the search and someone else out there has a similar mark and sees that you filed. And let's be real here, your trademark application is going to cost you hundreds of dollars. So why not do a search that's maybe a couple $100 and save a few hundred, $1,000 on that trademark application if it's not going to succeed, right? So I love that people want to do their own homework. You all out there are very smart and you can do a good amount on your own looking at those cursory searches, but it's not enough. So remember, trademark searches, comprehensive searches, that's what is worth paying for to avoid paying a bunch of money down the line on your application. So I hope that this was helpful. This is why a cursory online search is not always going to be enough. It's not a silver bullet, and you should do a comprehensive search. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.